Why are people in leadership positions afraid of success?
I always say you got to learn to dance with a doubt and you got to flirt with a fear. If you're not dreaming big enough and it doesn't scare you, then it's the wrong dream.
You have to be 2 or 3 times better than men in order to be seen as equal to them.
And I do think it's a belief and an identity that we create. Women especially feeling like they have to do more, be more, give more.
Very deep. I need to go and rethink my life.
What is something that you believed about leadership when you started out and you know now is completely wrong?
Oh gosh, how long have you got?
Our guest today spent a decade leading teams in British Airways, hit her own breaking point and rebuilt from the ground up. She's now helping founders go from burnout to brilliance. Rebecca, welcome to Building Great Tech.
Thank you for having me.
No worries, you're absolutely welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. So you've worked with over 150 business leaders now. What's the one thing quietly killing performance that none of them see coming?
I think with the line of work that I do, obviously I work a lot with women and their mindset when it comes down to peak performance. And a lot of the time there is so much self-doubt that is running the show on an unconscious level that they are sometimes not aware of.
Right. Okay. Yeah, got you. So what size businesses would you say that you're working with mostly?
So at the moment, I currently work with solopreneurs. So I work a lot of the time with women who have either left the corporate world and they are setting up their own businesses. They might be setting up their own agencies. So when it comes down to the line of work that I do, I'm all about, the human behind the system. It's all about that peak performance for me and really working on their own energetic internal capacity, if you will, so they can lead the team, so they can lead from the front from a place of brilliance and not burnout.
Okay, love that. And at what point would you say that they start seeing that problem coming to the surface within their performance?
I think what can happen a lot of the time is they've built the business model. Okay, so they've built the brand, they've built the business model, but the business model that they have built isn't equipped for their energetic capacity. So a lot of the time what will happen is they will hit burnout from a sense of mental exhaustion,
okay.
In terms of their team dynamics, sometimes from the place of their strategy isn't moving the needle forward. And it's always down to the fact of, in my opinion and personal experience, their leadership skills, and it always boils down to self-image. Okay. It's not necessarily what they're doing, it's who they're being.
Okay, interesting. And the difference between their doing and their being?
So when I always talk about that between their doing and their being, a lot of the time people are so strategy focused, okay. Right? They are all, strategy is important, 110%, but you've got to have the mindset behind the strategy for execution. And a lot of the time it's when they come to execute, they're coming from a place of force, pressure, working all of the hours. And that's when it really starts to hit, their peak performance, because they're not performing at the level of optimal that they actually need to.
Makes sense.
Hey guys, we're really hoping that you're enjoying this episode so far. And if you are, please like, subscribe and follow. And if you really want to know more about who we are and what we do, go to buildinggreattech.com. Now let's go back to the episode.
Okay, and talk to us a little bit about your experience. So how did working 12, 15 hours a day impact your ability to lead?
Oh my goodness, so much. So when I was in my corporate career, I was actually heading up the Wellbeing Initiative, funnily enough, and I was really implementing, they say, the work-life balance, the health side of things, the mental side of things. And I found myself, especially in the corporate industry, if you will, in that world, that the more hours you worked was rewarded. Right. So I found a lot of the time it was the more hours that you do, she works really hard. She's always here. She's always first one in the office, last one in the office. And what I actually realized was this is the bit where I personally hit burnout, because I was trying to do 1,000,001 things within my corporate career with the team that I had. And I was always into my own self-development and growth. But at the time, I was also building my business in my own time. and I was doing a lot around health and mindset back then. So I was originally health coaching and looking at nutrition and all of the other things and exercise and movement. And I realized how I wasn't actually making any time for any of that because I was so focused on getting the work done, building the team that I had, like leading from the front.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And you said, sorry, I just wanted to pick up on something quickly and then I'll shut
It's
up.
not going to be quick.
I was going to say, and you said you were rewarded. Just to clarify there, I'm assuming that wasn't financially, but more of like accolades from your kind of colleagues and leadership above. So it was more of a sort of rewarded on that, kind of getting some kudos and respect from the team.
Yeah, because I think sometimes when and again, I take full responsibility for this, even as a leader now, like I always think you are responsible, at the end of the day, because you have a voice. And if, the workload is building up and creeping up, then you have a voice to voice your concerns. But I think at the time, I was very much wanting to perform.
Yeah.
Right. And I was an overperformer. And I thought by being an overperformer meant running myself into the ground and doing and putting more hours into that, when in fact, in my opinion and experience now, it's a complete opposite of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And actually at the same time, so sorry. I was going to say, I just wanted to recognize that actually you did a monumental jump, just to like tell viewers where you kind of went from, because you were cabin crew and then through into leadership. So actually, like, okay, it was slightly detrimental to your health, but actually you did jump like loads within that corporate space, if I'm right in understanding that correctly.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I left, you can tell with my accent, I'm from Manchester. So I left the north and I moved to the south, and I worked obviously for British Airways as cabin crew. Had the most incredible 4 years. I was flying around the world. It got to the point where I wanted a little bit more in terms of my own development, and cabin crew, for me personally, had a bit of a cap. There's only so far. I didn't want to be a pilot, right?
Yeah.
Don't put me in charge of the plane, so there was only so far I could go within there. So yeah, I kind of got a little bit, I guess, curious as to like, how does this business work? How does an airline business work? What is the industry? Because it's a whole new world. When you've been cabin crew, you're in the clouds, right? You're in the clouds most of the time. And I just took a massive interest to business and different departments and things. So yeah, I kind of got my way in there. We call it working on the ground, right? So when we're in the air, but we're actually working on the ground when we've got a normal office job, if you will. And I just kind of, I moved my way around in different areas, and I've always been very much a people person. I've always been into personal development, people development. So those are kind of the areas that I was like really drawn to.
Yeah, I love that.
And I wanted to finally ask, because you mentioned that thing about, you felt like you were rewarded if you were working more, but like, isn't that creating that kind of vicious cycle that when you actually working your normal hours, you feel like you're under delivering?
Absolutely.
And do you think it's something about like personality that is there, that some people really want that kind of feel like they're delivering above and beyond what's expected from them?
I do. And I think, studying human behavior for God knows how many years now, I think, again, from personal experience and a lot of women leaders that I actually work with, it comes from a place of people pleasing, not feeling good enough. So they feel like they have to overperform, to feel like they're getting the recognition that they deserve. It's this constant repetition of over delivering.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, after you.
I was going to say, like, I remember my mom, when I was growing up, my mom used to tell me, like, you have to, be 2 or 3 times better than men in order to be seen as equal to them. Do you think that's a little bit like how our society pushes women to perform like much more?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a belief. I think it's societal pressure. And I do think it's a belief and identity that we create. And I remember working a lot with female leaders, especially when I was in corporate. And with British Airways, you always find that, a lot of families are in the organisation, if you will. And it's kind of part of their family dynamic. And I do think there is this element of women especially feeling like they have to prove, they have to do more, be more, give more. And I do think that is a natural way, I guess, if you will, within the corporate world. And again, that's just from my experience.
Yeah, it really resonates with me because I feel like I'm quite similar in that sense. That it's like always a pressure to do more, and there's never like a ceiling of like this is a good level. It always feels like there's a next level.
It's because you're a high performer, and again, I see this all of the time. When we raise the bar here and we're working towards it and we finally feel like we're getting close to that bar, the bar will then move again.
Yeah. It's like as you get to the peak, you see the next peak always.
Exactly that. And it's this level of, and don't get me wrong, I'm all about peak performance and I'm all about, seeing what you're truly made of and creating the most incredible life, business, whatever it is that you're building, like company. But you've also got to come from a place of, are you doing it from a lack of self-worth? Are you doing it because you feel like you have to prove? And I get a lot of this within my practice, especially when I do timeline therapy. Like a lot of the time, it's because they feel like they have something to prove. And when we strip it all back, it's about, why are you doing what you're doing? Can you continue moving at the pace that you're moving at? All right, you might be getting incredible results. And again, I see this with women that are in these high-end roles. They've built incredible success for themselves, but they don't feel relaxed in their body, in their nervous system, to actually enjoy the thing that they've built, because it's never enough.
And in your practice, like at what stage do like female entrepreneurs come to see you?
They come, in all honesty, they come at different stages. And that's when I've got like obviously different levels, if you will, of where they're at in their journey. So when I work with women, especially on a one-to-one basis, a lot of these times is when they have built their career, so they feel like they have reached a bit of the peak and like they've been working extremely hard. But what's happened is because they have hustled their way there, there's no switch off.
Mm-hmm.
Their nervous system is in this constant fight or flight, so they physically can't switch off. It's affecting things in their family, with relationships. They don't know how to just allow to rest. It's like they don't feel safe to rest. So they've built incredible success for themselves, both externally in terms of financially, or whether, with the team that they've built, or they're living the true purpose. But they're not able to enjoy that level because they're not operating from a place of peace. It's always from a place of panic and push.
Fascinating. And like, what would you say, what is something that you believed about leadership when you started out and now is completely wrong?
Oh gosh, how long have you got? I actually thought, in terms of leadership, it's having this persona, if you will, where nothing affects you. Like you don't have limiting beliefs, you don't have self-doubt, you don't have all of these things that majority of population experience, because we're human beings. Like you are this untouchable version, and that makes you a great leader. When I've obviously gone down the entrepreneurial road, become the CEO of my own company, and leadership is actually a lot around vulnerability. It's understanding that you are only human too. And I always say this to my clients, but if you want to create big impact in this world, be prepared to be impacted, and it's about creating the tools to move through life, like to move through the struggles and the challenges, because life will always life. And the one thing that I've noticed, especially building my own business, is if I can show up and be authentically me, that's true to me, but feel safe being me, feeling safe with my opinion, then everything else is a beautiful ripple effect. And I think that is an element for me personally of leadership, because people want to, not that they want to relate to you all of the time because you're in that role, because you are leading the way, right? You're leading a new path, but they also need to see that they can see a bit of themselves in you, because coming from a little bit of human psychology here, people like people who are like them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that. When we were chatting before, you said something that really surprised me. Why are people in leadership positions afraid of success?
Sometimes, it's funny when we do this work, because a lot of the time people sometimes think it's fear of failure. The thing that's stopping them is fear of failure, when in fact, a lot of the time when we dive deeper into the unconscious mind, it's this belief that if they become the most successful version of themselves, their current life, the way it is, has to be different. And what I've found a lot of the time is when you do go on this development journey, if you will, and you are expanding at a fast pace and you are growing, and I know this from my own experience as well as working with other women, is a lot of, people in your life may not resonate with who you are becoming and therefore may fall away from your life. And that can be really, one, scary, but two, uncomfortable.
Yeah. And would you say you've personally experienced that and had to sacrifice relationships on your journey?
So when I left my corporate job in June 24, 3 weeks before I left, my partner of 5 years, who I had a house and a mortgage with down south, just walked out the door and never came back.
When you left your corporate job?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So 3 weeks before, I handed my notice in the January, 3 weeks before, in the June, he walked out and said, I can't give you the life that you want to build.
Wow.
So that was a lot to navigate at that time. And, looking back, he has his reasons for leaving. And I genuinely think it's because I became this woman who was incredibly ambitious, right? I was ambitious anyway in corporate, and I was always wanting to, see what I was truly made of, push myself and put myself in uncomfortable situations to grow. But I think business absolutely amplified that, because through studying the mind, I could actually see the reality I wanted to create, and I knew it was possible, right? I didn't see it in front of my eyes, but I just had this inner knowing and feeling. And then when you go on this development journey, you do change, right? And that's the whole point. Like, you want to become somebody that is available for the life that you want to create. So going through all of that and having to sell my house, relocate, as well as build the business, I can honestly say that has enhanced my leadership skills more than ever by experiencing something that I thought was never going to happen.
Wow, that's a deep. It's an interesting story, because it's like, it probably was the best. So I mean, at the time, it probably felt horrible, but now, like, you can connect the dots backwards. It kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I always have gratitude every day, even though it was the most painful experience, of my whole life. I mean, I've relocated, I've met an incredible guy now, I'm living in the Cotswolds, like, everything is very much aligned.
One thing I wanted to ask you, because I've seen a lot of women in sort of, like leadership roles or semi-leadership roles. And there is like this opinion that women are more emotional than men, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think a lot of men are emotional, but they're just taught not to show emotions to a certain degree. But where do you think is this kind of magical line of like showing your emotions and not showing your emotions, especially like if you're in a leadership position? Like where is it seen as a weakness?
It's interesting, because in the line of work that I am today, showing emotions in the right way from a place of emotional mastery is actually strength.
Can you tell us more about it? Like, what does it mean, the emotional, like, strength? Like, sorry, the emotional. How did you put it? Like, you put it like
emotional mastery.
That's it. I love that. Yeah.
I always say, you can't lead with emotion. You can't build anything incredible or sustainable if you are leading with emotion, right? And I always talk about, from a female perspective, but becoming a ruler of your inner world. There is time and a place, of course, to express your feelings and your emotions. Like, I wouldn't obviously think that you're in a board meeting, an executive meeting in a corporate career, and then you just burst out into tears and have a mental breakdown. That is not what I'm saying in terms of, that is strength. What I'm saying is learning how you can, how to compose yourself. Like, really starting to understand your own behavior and your own emotions. Now, a lot of the time, like you've just mentioned, people do suppress them. So coming from a trauma-informed perspective, what you see a lot of the time is when something has happened in their past life that has been so painful, it's like a part of the mind, the body, the soul will just shut down and won't feel, right? And you've obviously mentioned that in men, and I know it is more common in men because I have had a lot of men through my timeline therapy as well. And it's just learning, in my opinion, to feel safe feeling. Feeling safe to feel. I don't think a lot of people actually feel safe because we're told, and again, it's from societal pressure or the way we've been brought up. You fall over as a child. It's like, oh my God, get up, don't cry. You're all right. And it's these little cues where it's, you've got to be brave, you don't cry, you've got to be brave, you've got to power through. When in fact, emotions are part of a human experience, and it's a form of regulation. We self-regulate by expressing emotion, but it's expressing it from a healthy perspective. It's having a healthy relationship with your negative emotions like anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt.
So
That's so interesting, because it is like an actual natural de-stressing mechanism. So if you are to like block off shedding a tear or cutting off that emotion, pushing it down, you're actually doing yourself more harm, because you're just like bottling it up.
Yeah. I'm also thinking, yeah, I'm a very emotional person, but I never, like in like professional space, never would show any kind of emotions, only because I don't feel like I want to show the other people like here's the thing that we can poke, and that's a weakness in that person. I think that's my kind of view of that, and I never feel like I do want to show the emotions in like at work or business.
Yeah, but you sort of, you defined a couple of different scenarios there, with like one leading with emotion in terms of it being a bit erratic and kind of uncontrolled. But then I also think you're talking about, being comfortable with accessing your emotions. It doesn't actually need to be while you're doing the leadership thing, but just comfortable in your own skin to not suppress anything that's then going to impact the leadership thing. So
you can feel it, but it doesn't necessarily you need to kind of start crying and creating a scene. Is that what you're saying?
Of course. And I think when you become an observer of your emotions, of your thoughts, and you start responding to life rather than reacting, that's what I call emotional mastery. Because if you are in a place where you are suppressing these feelings, and it's something that I cover in timeline therapy all of the time. It's like having a backpack on, and every negative scenario that happens to you that makes you feel a certain way. And let's be honest, we don't like feeling down. We don't like feeling sad and anger. Like, it's not something that we want to tap into, right? So a lot of the time we'll, think of it as a backpack, just putting all of these emotions in that backpack. As you go through life, that backpack is becoming extremely heavy.
Yeah.
And that's when you have things like, again, mental breakdown. They call it a nervous system breakdown, because that's the thing. You've not allowed emotion to flow through you like the tide of the sea, right? The ebb and the flow. You've just allowed it to build up, and that's when you start creating pressure points. And when you always think like it's the icing on the cake, like it only takes something. I've seen this in corporates time and time again. It takes the smallest thing that tips somebody over the edge.
Yeah.
And it's never about the thing. It's never about the thing. It's all of the negative emotions that have built up over time. And what's happening is they don't have the emotional capacity for anything else, and therefore they react rather than respond.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Very deep. I need to go and rethink my life.
Wait, so how do you manage that stuff in a corporate environment? Well, it doesn't have to be corporate, busy, new business, hectic, and you already have that habit of blocking that stuff off and shutting it down. How do you start to reverse that to avoid that tipping point where it's just a total breakdown and you've got no choice but to reset?
I think be curious. Be curious of yourself, and be curious of your behavior. Now, something I always say is you can't always see yourself in the picture when you're in the frame, right? We can't see our own blind spots. But if it's starting to have a negative impact on your life, on your career, then you need to get curious, because no one's going to come and raise the standard on your own life other than yourself.
Yeah, that's really good. Actually, I love that. And
also, I'm just jumping in on you again. I'm sorry.
That's right.
What you're saying there is take responsibility for yourself. It's like, look at curious of yourself, because what will happen is often we externalize, and it's that other person. Maybe I'm saying more about me than anything else. That other person, it's them in the office, but actually it's those triggers that you're getting internally on yourself is actually a reflection of how you're responding to the situation. So start there.
Exactly that, because you can't change other people, right? You absolutely can't. The only thing you can change is how you respond. But what a lot of people do is they react, and then they're in this, without sounding too harsh here, but victim mentality of blame. I feel like this because of them.
Yeah.
You know, I've ended up reacting this way because they did this. And it's like, you have to take responsibility back, because nobody has physically passed you an emotion to feel. You've chosen to feel that, whether you like that or not, unconsciously or consciously. That's it, right? You've decided. So when you start looking at your own behavior and actually thinking about, if you are constantly up against friction and arguments and things like that, I always say, check yourself. Without sounding too harsh here, like I said, no one's going to come and raise the bar on your own life. And if you want a different reality, you've got to start thinking differently.
I love this. I love this saying. What was it like? If you enter the room and it smells, maybe it's a room. But if you go to the next room and it still smells, maybe it's you.
Yeah.
I think it's slightly stronger than that.
Is it?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, this taking responsibility and self-observation, I think, is like the most important bit in terms of like self-development.
Yeah, it can only, like one of our coaches said, it's always like 50-50. It's not all them or all you. It could, their stuff could be triggering you, but the only person that you can actually impact is your stuff. So best place to start.
Yeah, and I think it's feeling safe again with your voice. This is one thing I know that happens in every single person. Like I said, I've had 150 women in timeline therapy, but I've also got an online self-development academy, which I've got loads of women in there as well. And the one thing that I always really, really work on with them is inner safety. Feeling safe with your opinion, feeling safe to feel, feeling safe to be seen. It always comes down to inner safety. And without getting a bit, without too woo-woo on here, but when we do timeline therapy and we go back to the root cause, a lot of the time is they feel these negative emotions because they don't feel safe in the world, and as we go through life, that's what creates your identity. And that's why I advocate in changing identity. Like, you can become anyone you want to become, right? It takes a little bit of work to get there. Of course it does. But you've got to have the belief. You've got to have a curious mind, because a curious mind leads to a successful life.
Like that line. We're going to borrow it.
Some say 95% of our behavior is unconscious. What does that actually mean for someone who thinks they're in control of how they lead?
Oh, that is a very good question. So yes, I do believe in the science behind 95% of what we do is unconscious. Within our unconscious mind, that is where all learning, change, and behavior happens. So what we don't know that is going unconsciously, and this is why I absolutely love this line of work that I'm in, is it's about spotting patterns. So when I've said that you can't see yourself in the picture when you're in the frame, you can't see your own blind spots. But when you get somebody that is like a mirror back to you and can actually show you your patterns and why you are getting the results that you are getting, that's when you can start to create change in form of your leadership.
As you already highlighted, I am a high performer, and in general, high performer really hate hearing to slow down a little bit. So how do you convince, very driven founders and entrepreneurs that pausing is the most productive thing sometimes to do?
I always say this, that there is power in the pause. And it's something that I have to drill into my women all of the time, because like I said, they don't want to be told to slow down. They're on a big mission. They're ambitious. They're full of energy. They want to create. They want to, be that leader. So if they was hitting from a place of burnout and you turn around and say, well, you need to slow down, that's basically not the thing to do, right? That's not going to help them in the slightest. What I've actually found works is delivering the same message, but in a very different way. So when they're hitting that point of absolutely mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion, like all of the exhaustions that we experience, they have to be a well-regulated, resourced leader, right? So when I ask the question back to them, what does that look and feel like to you? And when you start to really understand the brain and understand it needs rest, for you to come up with the best ideas, that's where there's the power in the pause. So I always use little techniques for my clients, especially like I do a lot of EFT tapping because I really find that helps regulate and obviously change the belief system as well. But when it comes down to their CEO habits, they're not going to go on like an hour's walk to, not listen to anything, have nothing in their ears. Try 10 minutes. Literally just try and allow your brain to rest for 10 minutes, and you'll be surprised because sometimes when our brain is so fried, we're not going to be as productive as we want to be. And this is the real challenge of learning that power is in the pause. But when you look at your life and your schedule, you're not leaving any space for any magic, if you will. You're not leaving space for the ideas to flow through. And then when they actually take the foot off the strategy from a place of power and not programming, then they become more expansive because they're well rested and regulated and they have emotional capacity to lead in a way that they could have never imagined before.
This really resonates with me again, because I think it's even worse. Like, it's not just like, if I stop doing things, it doesn't feel like I'm stopping. It feels like I'm going backwards, which is worse, or like spiraling down, really. But I think I said that to you a couple of days ago when we went for like an hour walk in the park by the river, and I said to you that always kind of like is very interesting for me to observe how the brain clears itself and organizes itself when you are in nature. And I always forget about it. So I don't want to go for a walk. And then I'm being dragged to go for a walk. And it's just like, wow, this is great. And then I forget it again. What can we do in order to remember about all of those tools?
For me, I have a daily method of operation. So I have a DMO, and they are my absolute non-negotiables. So every single day I have a minimum of 3 things that I work on for my mind, body, my soul. Okay. And these are like literal habits that I have decided that I am doing, because being ready, that is a feeling. Like you're never really ready, right? It's deciding that this is who I am now. So I think if you can literally have a daily method of operation of your non-negotiables, but don't have a list as long as your arm, because you're never going to do it. Right? These are like the absolute bare minimum basics. Like I'm literally running a brain health challenge inside my membership at the moment, and we're working on 3 different pillars in terms of brain health. So it's all about, I've got in there physical shift, right? So what we're doing in terms of a body shift to help with brain health and emotional capacity, the mental shift. And then you've obviously got the nutritional shift, but I obviously combine that in with spiritual as well. So if you can pick 3 things from them different, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can literally be, what is your nutrition for the day? Like, what is your non-negotiable? Drinking water, a lot of people forget. And it's these very much bare basics, because you are a spiritual being in a human body living a human experience. And this is when the mind and the body is so interconnected, as well as with, like, obviously with the soul, but without going down that road. What are you doing to fuel your mind? What are you doing to fuel your body? And it's about deciding what they are and being disciplined enough to do them and to execute.
Yeah, intentionally, like intentionally taking control of those things that you're inputting into your system that are going to support you holistically. I think because we're like in the modern age, we are just bombarded with content and just an endless stream of stuff that we're just consuming without like any real awareness. And to actually like solidify and think about that intentionally, okay, what am I going to give myself as a conscious thing? And because you can just get lost in the noise, and it's not, none of that is really for you. It's
well, it's
mostly people selling you stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I want to say that in the Western society, I think there's this weird image of success. Like, what is the success, right? What is it? Like, big house, a lot of money, fame, whatever. But I think not many people thinking, oh, I am healthy, I am very successful because I'm healthy. So, and there's like, I think the priorities are so messed up at the moment. Like whenever I open social media, it feels like I am a failure because everybody that you look at, obviously it's majority is like a lie, but still our brain doesn't know that. And unless you tell yourself that it's not true.
Well, I think that's like the way that the world is structured, that there's just one metric.
Yeah, one metric, money.
And that's like, you know, a financial one.
Yeah.
And that is the determinant of what is successful.
Yeah, what about, you know, mental health? What about relationships? What about physical health?
I think that's why like we are kind of riddled with some of the challenges that we see in society today, is just because that everything is pinned on that one item of success, but it's not, that isn't actually the reality of what true success is, I would say personally.
Do you know, there was a story that I actually read about this, because I'm a massive advocate for creating a limitless life and what does success mean to you, because a lot of the time you'll find people building a life and it's not their level of success, but they are conditioned to believe that's what they need to do to achieve a level of success, you know. But I remember reading this story and it said, I can't remember who it was by, but he basically was saying that when you are in the sea, for example, and if someone came up to you and started basically drowning you, the one thing that you are focusing on is your breath.
Yeah.
You're not focusing on the money, the car, the hat, like all of these things. You're focusing on being alive, right? And I think this is a lot of the time we forget that we are a human being, not a human doing, you know? And I think if you can start to appreciate, I mean, for me, I chased the money for a very long time. You know, I chased the money and I was all about that's what success means to me, because I was conditioned to believe that, right? Because that was what my reality was and the people I was surrounding myself with. Where now, the life that I'm living, I guess going through experiences in my life that have completely and utterly broken down who I used to be to help me build up into who I wanted to become. My level of success now is freedom, in the sense of freedom of choice, you know, inner peace, like free in the mind, because we have so much mental noise. And like you said, there is so much online that we are absorbing all of the time, and we're being thrown. And it's like, who do I listen to? Who do I follow? What's real now? AI's around, what's not? But if you completely and utterly focus on building inner peace within yourself, all of this clutter outside, it doesn't affect you like it used to.
Yeah. And what was the turning point for you? So you obviously were, you know, when you when you were in the corporate world and you had like the really challenging time, what was like, how did that all sort of play out?
In terms of how I ended up where I am?
Yeah. I'd be fascinated to hear your kind of story of, you know, chasing the money and then, you know, then you have the realization that actually it's not all about that.
I think when you go through a period of time and you lose everything, you actually realize what's important and what you want. So going back to my story, like I'd built a very successful career. You know, I'd started my own business. I was studying. I was, you know, doing all these different things with mindset. And I had a house, I had a mortgage, I had the guy, all of these things, beautiful car, nice holidays, you know, worked for BA, got to travel in some really beautiful cabins. And when my life completely did a 180, and it absolutely, like overnight, like one day my life was fine and everything was going how I imagined it in my head. The next day looked completely different. I didn't have my corporate job with the nice corporate salary. I didn't have my partner by my side. He decided to walk, and I didn't know why at the time. And when you go through that and you strip back every single thing that you built a life on, I built my life on the 3.2 life, if you will, like the house, the car, you know, planning on maybe having a family one day, you know, house, career. I actually realized I'd built a life in fear. I'd built this life that I thought was the way, like everyone else was doing this. This is how I should be living my life. And, you know, I always chased the money because I was like, that is a level of success, because the more I have, the more I can do, the more I can be, the more I can, live the life that I want to live. But I was chasing the wrong thing, because I was always looking outside of myself to feel a certain way. When I've got this, I'll be happy. When I've done this, I will feel a level of success. And then when you get to the point of everything crumbling down around you, and I remember sat there thinking, I've got to sell my house because I can't keep it with my ex. I was living in Berkshire near Windsor. My job is gone. I'm in the middle of building my business. My business isn't where I want it to be, but I'm in the middle of building it. Like, who am I? Who am I now? And you just go on this eye-opening journey, and then you actually realize what life you do want to build. And it's from a place of peace and passion, and not from a place of internal chaos.
You said you were building from fear. Can you explain that a bit?
Because I was always looking outside of myself to feel a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
When I buy my house, I feel like I've achieved something. Mm-hmm. I'll feel secure. I'll feel safe. I'll feel stable. When I've got the relationship and we get married, then I'll feel more stable. When I've got X amount in my bank account, then I'm going to feel secure. I was constantly chasing something outside of myself before I actually allowed myself to feel it without all of that.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, and when you lose it all and it all goes away, you actually find out who you are, what you really made, but you'll also find out who you can't be to become who you want to be.
I really like that. It seems like losing everything gives you some kind of freedom of all of this stuff. So you don't have to hold on to all of this, in panic almost all the time, and kind of like get clarity on who you are.
Exactly that. It highlights so many areas of your life. And then I even look back and think, God, I was pushing and forcing for what? I was building a life on shaky grounds because I didn't feel internally stable. I relied on all of the external stuff to feel safe.
Yeah.
So when all of that's gone, you actually get to the point and it's like, well, now what? And then I just went on this beautiful journey. And I think because I believe in the work that I do so much, I do believe in the magic. I do believe in manifestation. I believe that you can change your reality through thought, through action, aligned action. And I remember taking my followers on Instagram on the journey with me. I was like, my life has completely and utterly fell apart, but I'm going to show you. Like, I'm not just going to tell you. I don't like teaching from textbook. I can do that day in, day out if you wanted me to, but I teach you from experience. And I'm going to show you how I can rewrite my story through doing that inner work and building a life and a new reality. And I've literally done that. And it's beautiful to see that the women that followed me from that journey are still in my world today. And it's just really empowering when you can have that full trust within yourself.
I love that. What are the 3 things founders could do every day to stop fear running the show?
I always say you got to learn to dance with the doubt and you got to flirt with the fear. Because let me tell you, it ain't ever going to go away. And I think if you're not dreaming big enough and it doesn't scare you, then it's the wrong dream. So in terms of what can you do, like, it's easier said than done, of course, but this is when you have to become a ruler of your inner world and really dive into emotional mastery. Because if you let fear run the show and you lead with fear, you're not going to create what you're truly capable of creating. Right? You've got to get out of your own way. This is when you really need to start learning about nervous system regulation and allowing you to become an observer of your thoughts and emotion and literally allow it to pass through you, but have the mindset and this anti-fragile mindset that ain't going to stop you.
Yeah, love that. And so, like, apart from yourself, who would you sort of recommend the top people to follow?
In this line of work, I absolutely love, obviously, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Big advocate of him. I'm a big advocate of Bob Proctor's materials. So I did his Thinking into Results program. I mean, God bless his soul. He is no longer with us now. Love Tony Robbins and everything that he's about and what he teaches. I mean, I could go off on so many tangents here, but I'm going to give a shout out to one of my amazing mentors, actually, who has really helped me, especially on my journey. And she's called Lucy Superfox. That is her name on Instagram, I think she's on YouTube. She's got a podcast. she's just very much into, like, she's come from corporate, she's built an incredible brand and business, and it's everything that she stands for. So those are my top, well, I've mentioned 4 there, so there you go.
Love that. Thanks for sharing that. That's wicked. So what does a what is a well-regulated leader actually look like in practice, especially like when things are kind of going wrong?
So it's how quickly you can bring yourself back to baseline.
Okay.
So as you are on your journey as a female founder, whether you are a female leader in corporate or whether you're a female founder in business, you're not always going to be what they call regulated from this very calm, energetic state. Like, you're going for big things, you're doing scary things, you've got to make big, bold decisions. So of course, you're going to have the doubt, the fear, and the internal dialogue, if you will, the inner critic coming through. But it's how quickly you can observe, release, and regulate, in the sense of, you might be up here, but how quickly can you bring yourself back to baseline so the body is in homeostasis? You know, your body posture changes, the way you speak changes, and then you can lead from power and not your past programming.
Love that.
Nice.
Oh yeah, when we spoke before, we talked a bit about kind of identity shift for a founder that's kind of scaling. Say they go from 2 million to 20 million in revenue. What's like the one identity shift that will like make or break them?
So a lot of the time, people think that they have to think bigger, right? And I'm all about 10x thinking. You might have read the book 10x is easier than 2x. Yeah. It's a really, really powerful book, and I'm all for that. You do have to think differently. In my opinion, the thing that you have to really shift and multiply is your authority. You have to 10x your authority to deliver what you want to deliver.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that really
that's that. So how do you do that?
Everybody, come and have timeline therapy. No. In my opinion, you have to be so grounded in who you are, but you have to be okay with failing too. Right, you have to see failure as part of the ingredients to make the most incredible cake, right? It's part of it. So for you, in order to 10x your authority, that does not mean getting it right. It means taking that messy action. It means that seeing your results as data and not making it mean something about you, because a lot of the time people will connect their net worth to their self-worth, and that's when you plummet. So in order to 10x your authority, I mean, in my opinion, there are so many different modalities out there. I personally like EFT tapping to help rewire the mind and really create that new neurological pathways. Things like timeline therapy to get rid of any past doubt, anything that is running the show unconsciously that you're not aware of. Because what happens is you have an energetic, emotional charge that goes to a past memory that's not in your it's not basic. It's not in your conscious mind. It's running in your unconscious that's causing you to feel these things at a heightened level, right? You've got to a female leader and founder need to have capacity, right? They need to have mental capacity and emotional capacity. And the only way to do that is to basically clear what's been running the show previously, so you can think from a clear, collected way of thinking.
Love that.
I need to read that book, like that you mentioned, that 10x is easier than 2x.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's been absolutely awesome, Rebecca, right? So if someone wanted to seek your advice, learn more about what you're doing, where's the best place to reach out, connect, find you, follow you, socials, all that kind of stuff?
So my home is pretty much on Instagram. So I am Rebecca Christian on Instagram, although I am on LinkedIn. That's where you and I both connected. So Rebecca Christian on LinkedIn, and obviously all of my website and links are all connected to those platforms as well.
Amazing.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, I enjoyed it so much. Thank you for sharing all this stuff. It resonated with me on so many levels.
You had some free counseling. Yeah, thanks so much.